I did things I am not proud of. I became someone I never planned to be. And I got a diagnosis that I thought was the end of my story. I am going to tell you all of it. The village, my father, the city that swallowed me whole, the choices I made that I cannot take back, and the man who sat down beside this hospital bed and refused to leave. My name is Adaora, and this is the story of how I survived not just the illness, not just the city, but myself. Stay with me. This one is going to cost you something. My mother died the morning I was born. Her name was Ngozi, which means blessing. She bled out in the early hours of a Tuesday in a village with no hospital close enough to matter. My father sat outside while it happened. He heard me cry for the first time at the exact same moment he understood my mother would not. They placed me in his arms, and I had my mother's eyes. Exactly my mother's eyes. He loved me. I know that now. But he could never look at me without seeing everything he had lost. And a child who reminds her father of grief grows up knowing she is both loved and a burden. That is one of the loneliest ways to grow up. So I learned to sit alone, and I learned to be quiet, and I learned that warmth was something that happened to other children, not to me. I was 5 years old and already knew how to be invisible. Mama Chioma arrived when I was 3. My father looked relieved. I did not understand why then. I understand now. He had found someone to fill a space he did not know how to fill himself. Her own children ate first. Her own children's school fees came first. Her own children's clothes were bought new. I ate what remained, wore what had been outgrown, sat at the edge of a family that technically included me. My father saw it. He said nothing. And that silence, that small daily nothing, taught me something I carried for years. The people who should protect you will not always protect you. The only person I could be completely sure of was myself. Simi arrived when we were both 12. Her family moved from Lagos, and on her very first day, she walked across the compound and sat down beside me. No introduction, no reason. She just sat there like she had always belonged next to me. She was everything I was not. Loud, certain, completely unbothered by what people thought. And she gave me something nobody had ever given me before. She looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. For a girl who had spent her whole life invisible, that was more powerful than anything. At 19, Simi came back from Lagos and said, "Come with me. There is nothing here for you." There never was. I looked at the compound, the step, the kitchen doorway, the parlor, where my father had chosen his newspaper over me, and I packed one bag. I said goodbye to nobody, and I told myself I was walking towards something. I did not know yet that I was also walking away from the only version of myself I would be able to respect. Lagos hit me like a physical thing. The noise, the color, the sheer number of people, more people on one street than in my entire village. Everyone moving with purpose, everyone knowing where they were going. Simi showed me everything. The markets, the parties. "This is how people live," she kept saying. And I, who had spent 19 years sitting on a concrete step watching other people's warmth from the outside, finally felt like I was inside something. I did not ask what it was costing me to get in. I was too grateful to be warm. The change happened slowly. The clubs first just to keep Simi company, then the men just for the attention. The way someone starved of warmth will take it from anywhere it is offered. Then The money, because the city is expensive and nobody was giving it away for free. Simi, who started all of it, actually pulled me aside once and said, "Adaora, slow down." I told the girl who started it all to mind her business because that is how these things work. The student always goes further than the teacher. The teacher had a foundation. I was building on nothing. I had nowhere to stop. Some nights, I would sit on my bed with the makeup still on and look at my hands and think, who are you? What are you doing? And then morning would come and I would put the wig back on and go back out. Because I did not know who I was without the performance. I had been invisible for so long, at least this version of me could be seen. I was 24 when I got the results. I had been feeling unwell for months and ignoring it the way you ignore things when you are afraid. The answer would be worse than the not knowing. I went alone. I sat in that waiting room alone. And when the doctor called my name and sat across from me and said the words, I heard them and then I heard them again, HIV positive. I sat in that plastic chair for 45 minutes after the doctor finished. I was not thinking about the illness. I was thinking about my mother, about Ngozi in her yellow wrapper who died so I could live, about all the ways I had spent the life she paid for, about what she would think if she could see me sitting in this chair holding this piece of paper. I thought about her yellow wrapper. I thought about it for a long time. Then I folded the paper very small, put it in my bag, walked back out into Lagos, which was still loud, still vivid, still completely indifferent to one more broken person moving through it. I met Daniel at a roadside buka on a Wednesday afternoon. He sat at a nearby table and ate his food and minded his business. He noticed me. I put my walls up immediately. He said good evening when he left. That was it. I thought about him for 3 days. Not because he was the most handsome man I had ever seen, but because he was the first man in years who had looked at me and not immediately started calculating what I was worth to him. He came back to that buka every Wednesday. 3 weeks before, he spoke more than a greeting. When he finally asked my name, he asked it like the answer genuinely mattered to him. I almost did not tell him. I told him everything on our 4th meeting, not because I trusted him, because I was tired of performing, tired of the weight of a secret sitting on my chest every day. I told him about the village, my mother, my father's silences, Simi, the city, all of it. And then I told him about the diagnosis. I watched his face while I said it. I had imagined every reaction, disgust, pity, the slow backing away. What I had not imagined was silence, real silence, and then, thank you for telling me. That was all. I cried for the first time since the clinic. Not because everything was okay, but because someone had heard the worst thing about me and stayed in their seats. Do you know how long I had been waiting for that? My whole life, I had been waiting for someone to hear the worst thing and stay. He left that night. I understood. I had handed him something enormous and he needed time to hold it. I did not call him. I did not chase. I had stopped chasing people toward me. 6 months passed. I focused on my medication, my health, and quietly I started rebuilding the version of myself that existed before the city got hold of me. I put the wigs in a bag and closed it. I washed off the heavy makeup, and one morning I looked in the mirror and I saw my mother looking back at me, and I said, "There you are, there you are." And then a knock at the door. He stood there with nothing in his hands and everything on his face. "I needed time to be sure," he said. "I am sure now. I would rather be with you than be without you and safe." I stepped back from the door. I let him in. We married on a Saturday in April. Small, simple, real. I wore my natural hair out for the first time in years. No wig, no performance, just me. Seeing me came. We had found our way back to each other, not as the girls we were, but as the women we had become. She cried during the ceremony. I pretended not to notice, because some moments are private even when they happen in public. My father did not come. I had invited him. I had made peace with the possibility that he would not. I had not made peace with how much it still hurt. But I stood at that altar with Daniel's hands in mine, and I chose to let the hurt exist without letting it ruin the joy. That is what healing actually is. Not that the pain disappears, you just learn to carry both. 3 years after the wedding, the doctor called us in. I had been consistent with my medication, my viral load undetectable for 2 years. She sat across from us and said words I made her repeat 3 times. Undetectable, functionally cured. Daniel heard it first. His hand tightened around mine. I turned to look at his face and he was crying. This man who chose me when choosing me was the harder thing. Was sitting in a doctor's office crying with joy. For me, I thought about my mother, about Ngozi in a yellow wrapper, about a woman who died so a girl could live. And I wondered wherever she was, could she see that the girl had finally started to. My mother died so I could live. My father loved me from a distance that felt like nothing. A stepmother showed me what it felt like to be invisible in your own home. A friend took my hand and led me somewhere I was not ready for. A city swallowed me whole and spat me back out changed. A diagnosis told me the story was over, and a man sat down beside me and refused to leave. Somewhere in all of that, between the village step and the doctor's office, between the girl who watched warmth from the outside and the woman who finally let it in, I survived. Not just the illness, not just the city, not just the loneliness and the choices and the consequences. I survived myself. And that is the hardest survival of all. If my story moved you, subscribe to Moonlight Tales by Joy. New stories every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to know their story is not over. And leave me a comment. What part of my story stayed with you? I read every single one. Your next story is already waiting.